Prelude to Revolution by Dominic Williams and Emily Wargo. The Navigation Acts of 1651 were made to ensure and strengthen the government's power over trade between England, the New England colonies, and the rest of the world. Overall, English government wanted to have complete control over European trade. This need for control angered the colonies and the rest of the world, making them want to rebel against England. Salutary neglect was a British policy enforced in the colonies that legalized the violation of trade laws by the colonist. It contradicted the Navigation Acts because salutary neglect made it okay for colonists to stop using English ports for imports and exports. It helped the colonists because they no longer had to pay large amounts of taxes to ship their imports and exports to and from England and to use their ports. Now they can import and export goods from anywhere under salutary neglect. The Proclamation of 1763 did not allow colonists to go west of the border the English had established. They were now restricted as to where they could explore and colonize westward. This angered the colonists and caused them to revolt against England as a result. The Sugar Act was passed to cut in half the tax on molasses per gallon. It also placed a new tax on various goods and regulated the export of lumber and iron. It was the main cause of the tax colonies' rum's industry decline, and its other purpose was to decrease trade with certain islands that were important ports. The Sugar Act affected the colony and by limiting which markets the colonies could sell to, and the amount of money which the importing of British goods was available. The Sons of Liberty were a group of middle to lower class colonists from Boston who were started to revolt against the Stamp Act. In less than a year, there were Sons of Liberty activists and members in every colony. They wanted the enforcers of the Stamp Act to resign and any merchants who were against them to be threatened and eventually punished. Though the group's most effective work was contained in the newspaper. A lot of Sons of Liberty were printers, so the most recent revolts could always be found printed in the newspaper. As the group grew, it had taken place the royal government in every colony. The Stamp Act stated that all American colonists had to pay taxes for every piece of paper printed. The money gathered was used to compensate for protecting the American boundary near the Appalachian Mountains. The Quartering Act stated that colonists had to provide shelter in their own houses for the British soldiers to stay in America. There weren't enough of the colonists' homes to fit the soldiers. They had to build a source of shelter for them to live in. This aggravated the colonists since they had to provide for so many British soldiers that they didn't even volunteer to do. The Boston Massacre was a street fight between a group of patriots and British soldiers, though it was not as big of a deal as it was often hyped up to be because only 5 colonists were killed in the act.
In June of 1772, a dramatic event to demonstrate the severity of the crisis, Lieutenant William Duddington of Her Majesty's ship Gaspee was charged with patrolling the waters of Narragansett Bay off Rhode Island. Duddington had earned a reputation as an overzealous enforcer in records for merchants whose goods were impounded. News of the grounding quickly reached Providence, and a party of 55, led by a man named John Brown, planned an attack on the ship under the authority of the Vice Admiralty Courts, was sent to apprehend the predators of Gaspee affair and hauled them back to England for trial. Though the identities of the predators were widely known, the investigation was fruitless. No arrests were made. The Tea Act, passed by Parliament on May 10, 1773, granted the British and East Indian Company tea a monopoly on tea sales in American colonies. This was ultimately compelled at a group of Sons of Liberty on the night of December 16, 1773. To disguise themselves as Mohawk Indians, boarded 3 ships moored in Boston Harbor and destroyed over 92,000 pounds of the tea. Townshend revenue also taxed glass, lead, oil, paint, and paper. Due to boycotts and protests, the Townshend Revenue Act taxes were repealed on all commodities except tea in 1770. The tea tax was kept in order to maintain Parliament's right to tax the colonies. The Tea Act forced colonists to buy from the East Indian Tea Company. Boston Tea Party. The Boston Tea Party was organized and carried out by a group of patriots led by Samuel Adams, who also known as the Sons of Liberty. Over 5,000 people gathered at the Old South Meeting House the largest public building in Boston at the time. 10 10 a.m. on December 6, 1773, they decided to dress up as Mohawk Indians between 7 o'clock p.m. and 10 o'clock p.m., according to eyewitnesses. It was also documented that 1,600 people participated in the Boston Tea Party. Dumping all the tea in the harbor caused a lot of damage and caused it to smell. So the original location of Boston Tea Party no longer exists due to extensive landfills, and have destroyed the location. Intolerable Act. On May 10, 1774, Parliament passed the Tea Act with the goal of aiding the struggling British East India Company. The colonists were pressed with greater taxes without any representation in Britain. This eventually led to the Boston Tea Party. In retaliation, the British passed several punitive acts aimed at bringing the colonists back into submission of the king. The First Continental Congress. The First Continental Congress met in Carpenter Hall in Philadelphia from September 5th to October 26, 1774. Carpenter Hall was also the seat of Pennsylvania Congress. Pennsylvania and New York sent delegates with firm instructions to seek resolution with England. Conflict in Boston overcame the effort of conciliation. On October 14th, the Declaration resolved and established the course of the Congress. As a state of the principles common all of the colonies, Congress voted to meet again the following year, and grievances were not attended by England. It was to become effective on December 1st, 1774, unless Parliament should rescind the Intolerable Acts.